The cardboard box was too big for the boy holding it. Level 3 of a courthouse parking garage. Osaka. A Tuesday in March. Haruto Ishida was on his hands and knees between a concrete pillar and a white sedan. He was vomiting into a drain grate. His son Sota stood 4 steps away, 15 years old, holding the box from his father's office. A stapler, a framed photo, a ceramic cup with the company logo half worn off. The boy did not put the box down. He just said it, flat, twice. "Dad, get up." Haruto could not in that moment. Not in the one after it. His arms shook the way arms shake when a man has been drinking since 6 in the morning. 2 hours earlier, he had signed a bankruptcy petition with a borrowed pen. 11 years of a logistics company, 41 employees, finished in a room the size of a classroom. A woman in a gray suit thanked him for his cooperation. She said it the way a clerk thanks anyone. On the floor of that garage, Haruto understood something ugly. The bankruptcy was not the bottom. The bottom was that his son had seen this before. Not the garage, the kneeling in the hallway, the kneeling by the toilet in the guest bathroom at 2 in the morning. A boy learns the shape of his father's back on the floor. That is what rock bottom actually is. Not a number in a court document. A posture your child recognizes from behind. Most people get this backwards. They think collapse arrives as an event. One bad quarter, one diagnosis, one phone call. It arrives as a posture you hold so often that the people who love you stop being surprised. What follows is not a story about a bankruptcy. It is a story about a system roughly 400 years old, built by men whose profession was fear. It works on debt. It works on the bottle. It works on a body you stopped recognizing in the mirror. It works on the career that ended at 48, on the marriage that went quiet years before anyone said the word. The Japanese called it the way of the warrior. And the first thing it demands is the one thing Haruto could not do. Get up. Chapter 2. How a Careful Man Falls. Haruto was not reckless. That is the part that unsettles people who hear the whole story. He was the careful one in his family. First to arrive, last to leave. 2 gray suits, both pressed. He built the company out of one leased truck in 2009. By 2017, he moved refrigerated cargo for supermarkets across the Kansai region. 41 employees, a wall of framed safety certificates, a photograph with the mayor. Then something real happened from outside, with a name and a date. In October, his largest client changed its payment terms. 30 days became 90. One sentence in an email from a procurement manager named Ueda. It was not personal. It was a spreadsheet. Haruto still paid drivers on the 25th of every month. Fuel on delivery. Insurance quarterly. Truck leases whether or not the trucks moved. A 90-day gap in a business running on 4% margin is not a delay. It is a hole under the floor. He did what careful men do. He covered it quietly. A bridge loan from a private lender named Ogawa in an office with no sign on the door. Interest that made his ears warm when he read it aloud. A personal guarantee. His signature. His house. He did not tell his wife, Ayaka. He told her the numbers were seasonal. That word did a great deal of work for a long time. Seasonal. Then his brother-in-law, Tomo, offered to help. 3 million yen from a man who sold restaurant equipment and liked being asked. Haruto accepted it at a family dinner in front of everyone with a small bow. That is when the debt stopped being financial. The first drink that mattered was not in a bar. It was in his car in the company lot at 11 at night before driving home. One warm canned highball to stop his hands shaking before he opened his own front door. It worked. That is the part nobody explains about the beginning. It worked so well that a careful man filed it under maintenance. By January, it was 3 cans. By February, he kept a bottle in the door panel. On the 14th of March, Ogawa's people came to the office during loading hours. They were polite. They were also visible to every driver on the dock. 9 days later, he signed the petition with a borrowed pen. 2 hours after that, His son said, "Dad, get up." Chapter 3. The Man Who Sharpened Knives. 6 weeks after the courthouse, Haruto walked to a shop under the train tracks in Fukushima Ward. He carried his wife's kitchen knives in a rolled towel. He intended to sell them. 3 knives, a gift from Ayaka's mother 15 years earlier. The shop was 2 meters wide. A whetstone bench, a bucket, a smell of wet stone and iron. The man behind the bench was 71. His name was Sano Tetsu. He had taught kendo for 30 years at a high school in Nishinomiya. Sano unrolled the towel. He studied the edges for a long time. Then he said the knives were not worth selling, only sharpening. Haruto explained that he needed cash, not sharpening. Sano asked how much. Haruto said the number out loud, 8,000 yen, for groceries. Sano put 8,000 yen on the bench. Then he pushed the whetstone next to it. "The money is a loan," he said. "You repay it at 6 in the morning. 1 knife a day, 100 days. Haruto laughed. It came out thin, like a cough. He asked what sharpening knives had to do with anything. Sano's answer is the reason this story exists. "Nothing," he said. "That is the point. You will not want to. You will come anyway." Here is what Haruto expected. Wisdom, a saying, something to feel. He got a schedule. Most recovery stories are sold as a moment of insight, a hand on a shoulder, a sentence that rearranged everything. That is not how any of the men in this story got out. They got out through a calendar. Sano told him one more thing that first morning. He said the warriors of his country were not brave men who happened to be disciplined. They were frightened men who had been made reliable. Fear was assumed. Fear was the working condition of the job. The whole code was built around one practical problem. How do you make a terrified human being do the correct thing on time, repeatedly, for decades? Not once, on time, repeatedly. Haruto came back the next morning at 6. He was hungover. He sharpened 1 knife badly. Sano said nothing about the smell of him. Sano said, "Tomorrow." Chapter 4. The Drunk Who Became a Sword Saint. There was a man in Japanese history who solved Haruto's exact problem. His name was Yamaoka Teshu, born 1836, died 1888. He is remembered as one of the last great swordsmen of the samurai era. He is less often remembered as a spectacular drinker. Accounts of his life are frank about it. Enormous quantities of sake for decades. He never presented himself as a purified man. In 1868, the Imperial Army was closing on Edo, the city now called Tokyo. 1 million people lived inside it. A battle would have burned it. Teshu rode out through hostile lines, carrying a message. He reached the enemy commander, Saigo Takamori, and opened the talks that led to a bloodless surrender. Edo was handed over without the fighting. The city survived. The man who did that was no model of clean living. He was a man who had built a structure strong enough to carry someone unreliable. Later, he founded a training hall in Tokyo called the Shunpukan. His method there looks almost unbelievable on paper. 1,000 days of continuous practice. No exceptions for illness, weather, or mood. Then the trials he called Seigen. 200 bouts in a single day. The hardest of them ran 3 days. 1,400 matches. Men finished with hands they could not open. Ask the question a modern mind asks here. Why the volume? Why not train smarter, fresher, on the days you feel motivated? Teshu was not building skill. He was building a man who did not negotiate. This is the part nobody explains when discipline gets sold to you. You are told discipline is willpower, applied harder. It is not. Discipline is the removal of the daily negotiation. Wendy Wood, a research psychologist at the University of Southern California, spent decades measuring this. Her diary work found that roughly 43% of daily behavior is performed habitually in the same setting, cued by the place rather than by a decision. Not chosen. Triggered. Think about your worst hour of the day. It has an address, a chair, a time, a screen, a particular light in the room. You did not decide to lose that hour. The room decided for you. That is why Sano said 6 in the morning. One knife. He was not building Haruto's character. He was writing over Haruto's cues. Judson Brewer, a psychiatrist and researcher at Brown University, studies craving as a loop, trigger, behavior, reward, repeated until the loop runs without you in the room. In his smoking work, people trained to observe a craving with curiosity quit at higher rates than those given a standard program. Read that again slowly. Not resisting, observing. A craving examined closely is a set of physical sensations with a duration. It has a beginning. It has a peak. It ends whether or not you obey it. Haruto learned this on a whetstone at 6 in the morning, with wet hands, wanting a drink. He learned that the wanting did not require an answer. There is a physical reason this feels impossible from the inside. Nora Volkow, who directs the National Institute on Drug Abuse, has described the pattern in imaging research for years. Repeated use teaches the reward system to treat one cue as the most important signal in the room. At the same time, the region that would veto it becomes less effective. The alarm gets louder. The brakes get softer. That is not a character flaw. It is a maintenance problem. A maintenance problem is solved by a schedule, not by shame. Haruto sharpened a knife every morning for 100 days. On day 62, he still wanted a drink at 11 at night. The difference was that 11 at night no longer decided what 6 in the morning did. Chapter 5, The Way of the Warrior. The code Sano was teaching has a name, Bushido. The Way of the Warrior. It was not a rulebook handed down before the fighting started. Most of it was written after the wars ended, by men trying to name what had kept them functional. Yamamoto Tsunetomo dictated the Hagakure in the early 1700s, decades into peace. In 1900, a scholar named Nitobe Inazo set it out for foreign readers as a list of virtues. Strip away the swords and the silk. What remains is an operating system for unreliable people. Haruto did not receive it as philosophy. He received it as 7 instructions. Here they are, in the order he actually used them. 1. Gi. Integrity. Decide before you are tempted. Peter Gallwitzer, a psychologist at New York University, calls these implementation intentions, an if-then plan written in advance. If this happens, I will do that. Reviews across dozens of studies find the effect large enough that the method is now standard in health behavior work. The reason is simple. In the moment, you are not the person who made the plan. Haruto wrote 3 lines on a card, kept where his credit cards used to be. If someone offers me a drink, I hold my tea with both hands and say I am driving. If I am awake past midnight, I do not go to the convenience store. If the shaking starts, I call Sano's shop and let it ring twice. Small, specific. Written while he was sober enough to be honest. 2. You. Courage. Courage is an appointment, not a feeling. Nobody feels brave at 6 in the morning in February. The warriors solved that by removing the question from the morning entirely. The hour was fixed. The mood was irrelevant. Choose one hard thing. Give it a time. Make that time non-negotiable for 100 days. Not 10 new habits. One appointment you would be ashamed to miss. 3. Ray. Respect. Bow to the ordinary. In the shop, Sano made Haruto wipe the bench before and after, every single day. Haruto found it absurd for 2 weeks. Then he noticed the wiping had become the border of a room he could step into. A ritual is not superstition. It is a doorway your body recognizes. Yours might be lacing shoes at the door, the same cup, the same 4 minutes of silence. The content matters far less than the fact that it never changes. Chapter 6, The Ledger and the Witness. 4. Makoto. Sincerity. Write the true number. Haruto's debt was 38 million yen when he finally added it correctly. For 2 years, he had carried it in his head as roughly 30. That gap of 8 million yen was not accounting. It was anesthesia. Every Sunday evening, he wrote the real figures in a notebook. Debt, drinks, weight, hours slept, days since the last one. No commentary, No promises, numbers only. Here is what a ledger does that a resolution cannot. A resolution is about the future, which is the one place lying is free. A ledger is about the past week, where lying gets expensive fast. Do this once a week for a month, and you will meet a stranger. The stranger is you, described accurately, for the first time in years. 5. Chugi, loyalty. Loyalty means a witness. The warrior code was never about a man alone, quietly improving himself. It was about obligation to specific, named people who would notice. Haruto's witness was not his wife. That was too much weight for a marriage already thin. It was Sano at 6 in the morning, who would look at his hands, and a driver named Fujita, one of the 41 he had laid off. Fujita picked up the first time Haruto called to apologize. They started walking on Thursday nights. 2 men, 1 hour, no advice. Choose your witness badly, and you choose someone who forgives you too quickly. Choose someone who will simply look at you and who keeps the appointment. Chapter 7, New Year, 1 cup. Day 211 was the 1st of January. New Year, Ayaka's family, her mother's apartment in Sakai. 11 people at one low table. Haruto had been dry for 7 months. Tomo was there, the brother-in-law, the 3 million yen. Tomo had never asked for it back. He had also never stopped mentioning it lightly. At the table, he poured sake for everyone, in order oldest first. When he reached Haruto, he did not skip him. He held the flask over the cup and set it warmly in front of the whole table. 1 cup. It is New Year. You are not sick. You are just proud. The card in Haruto's wallet said to hold his tea with both hands and say he was driving. The card had not accounted for 11 people going quiet at once. Soda sat across the table. 17 now. Haruto drank the cup. Then he drank the ones after it, which nobody counted, including him. He woke at 4 in the morning on the floor of the guest room. Soda had put a blanket over him and left a bottle of water by his head. That was the worst part, not the fall. The competence of a boy who had done this before. This is where most people stop. Not at the drinking, at the arithmetic. 211 days, erased, back to 0. That arithmetic has ended more recoveries than any bottle. Haruto did not reach the shop at 6. He arrived at 6:30, unwashed, shaking. He expected disappointment, which is something a drinker can drink about for a week. Sano handed him the stone. Then he said the one sentence Haruto repeated for the rest of his life. The count is not the point. The returning is the point. Tsunetomo wrote something close to it in the Hagakure. Resolve is renewed daily. It is never achieved once. Miyamoto Musashi, alone in a cave in 1645, wrote 21 precepts for a student walking a solitary road. They read like a man reminding himself, not a man who had finished. That is the whole difference between a code and a resolution. A resolution breaks permanently. A code gets picked up again in the morning. Haruto called Fujita that night and said it out loud. I drank on New Year. Fujita said, Thursday. Usual place. Chapter 8. Honor is repayment. 6. Mayo. Honor. Honor is repayment, not reputation. Haruto had spent his working life protecting his reputation. That is what the word seasonal was for. Reputation is what people say about you. Honor is what you send back. So he wrote a list of what he owed, and not only in yen, Ogawa the lender, the bank, Tomo's 3 million. 41 people who had learned the company was gone from a notice taped to a dock wall. He could not repay the money quickly. He was earning it on night shifts, moving other men's cargo. So he repaid what he could pay immediately. The truth, in person, one at a time. 19 of the 41 agreed to meet him. 4 shouted. 2 cried. 1 offered him work. This is the step people skip, and it is the step that makes the discipline hold. Private discipline with no repayment attached turns into a hobby, a cold shower, a spreadsheet, a personality. Discipline aimed at a debt you named out loud has traction. 7. Gin. compassion, including toward the man you used to be. This one comes last for a reason. Given first, it becomes an excuse. Given last, after the ledger and the witness and the repayment, it becomes fuel. Sano put it plainly one morning in the second year. A man who hates himself will always find a way to punish himself. Punishment is expensive. Compassion is cheaper. Compassion shows up at 6 the next morning. 2 years and 4 months after the courthouse, Haruto had sharpened knives on more than 700 mornings. He was not rich. The debt was not gone. He looked older than his photographs. He ran a 2-truck operation with Fujita, moving refrigerated cargo on contract. He had been dry for 1 year and 5 months, with 2 lapses inside it. Both reported the week they happened, and his hands were steady enough to hold a stone at a fixed angle for 11 minutes. Chapter 9. The Box. The cardboard box from the courthouse is still in his apartment. It sits in the closet under the winter blankets. It holds 3 things: the ceramic cup with the worn logo, the court letter, a whetstone worn hollow in the middle. He does not keep it to feel ashamed. He keeps it because the box is the honest measure. On a Tuesday in September, Soda, 19 now, drove them both to a job in Kobe. They parked on level 3 of a garage with the same gray light and the same drain grates. Haruto felt it arrive. The taste of that March morning, complete in his mouth. He got out of the car and knelt on the concrete, not because his body folded, because a strap under the pallet had come loose. He pulled it tight with both hands, stood, and checked the seal on the cargo door. Soda watched from the driver's side, holding a clipboard instead of a box. Then the boy said 2 words, in that same flat voice, 7 years older. "Dad, ready?" And Haruto was. That is what redemption looks like in practice. Smaller than the word suggests. Same garage, same knees on the same concrete, same flat voice. One difference: he chose to go down, and he could get up. Here is the part that ought to worry you. Haruto's collapse was not caused by weakness. He was the most disciplined man in his family. Discipline held him together for 11 years. Then the same discipline let him hide the hole under the floor until it swallowed everything. The strongest people you know are not protected. They are load-bearing. They do not bend, so nobody checks them. Then one day they go without warning. If you want to understand why that happens and how to catch it early, that video is on your screen right now.